This is a video demo of a couple of practical methods you can use to get reliable color adjustment results in Photoshop. In my experience, one-click or automated functions don't work consistently for every photo you'll ever encounter, and it's not practical to manually edit every photo. So what I advocate is a combination of automated functions along with some more advanced techniques. Before we get into it, a couple of things you should have in mind. Color is subjective. By that, I mean it's subjective to the composition of a photo. Light is reflective, so objects in an image will affect the tone of adjacent objects. It's subjective to lighting conditions within the image. And it's also subjective to artistic license. Color is a visual language, and you'll always want to have in mind what your visual narrative is going to be with the final product. Also have a balanced strategy. I recommend starting with automated functions and then making minor adjustments as needed with more advanced tools. Use the numbers from the color channels, even if you can't reliably tell what's happening on screen, like, for example, if your monitor isn't calibrated correctly. The numbers in the info palette are always going to be accurate to a photo's color representation. Also, use your eyes. This is where subjectivity comes into play. For example, if you have a photo of a rock formation, it's often not hard to find neutral midtones within Photoshop's automated tools. But if that photo were taken during a sunrise, as an example, you'd probably want to make sure that it retains a warmer color cast. With that in mind, I have a photo that's a little harder to correct than it looks. Mount Rushmore's rock is roughly a neutral gray, but there are some subtle variations. If your neutral tone reference is just a little bit off, it can have a major impact on the color imbalance for the entire image. And this photo comes from Wikipedia, and I'm linking to it in the description. Okay, so starting off, let's take a look at what I've got in the layers palette. We're going to be comparing the original photo to a couple of different techniques that I'm going to show you. And as you can probably tell, the original photo does have a pretty reddish color cast. Throughout this demo, we're going to be sampling parts of the image to find our neutral whites, midtones, and blacks. In order to do that, we're going to use the color sampler tool, which is right here in the tool palette. And since the original image is a JPEG, it's got a lot of compression noise in it. So we're going to use a slightly larger sample average, which for this purpose I'll be using a 5x5. To start off, we'll find our neutral black and white. Those two are actually pretty easy. So if you go into the image menu, under adjustments, and then levels, you can drag the black slider on the histogram. If you hold down your option key, you'll start to see parts of the image that are showing up as black. So we'll cancel out of that. This lower left portion of the image is looking pretty good, so we'll use this. We'll do the same for white. Cancel out of that. Find our white. And then we'll find our neutral gray. That one does take a couple of extra steps, but it's actually not that hard to do. We'll just need to create a new layer. We're going to go to the Edit, and then the Fill menu, and then select 50% gray. A few things that I'll point out about the RGB color mode is it's based on red, green, and blue. That's where the name comes from. And its values are anywhere from 0 to 255 per channel. So if you have an RGB value that is 000, that's pure black where no color is represented, or 255, 255, 255, that's pure luminosity or white, and then right in the middle is 128, which is gray, and as you can see right here, that's what you're seeing on screen right now. Next, we'll change this layer's blending mode to difference, and this highlights parts of the image that do not have a neutral midtone. Then we'll add a threshold adjustment layer. And if we crank this value all the way to the left, you'll start to see parts of the image that do have a difference in tone. This part's looking pretty good, so we'll pick that. We won't need these layers anymore, so we'll go ahead and delete them. Just a quick recap of the color samples that we have in the image. Down here in the lower left, we have our black, which is right here in the info palette. The number 2 position is right about on Thomas Jefferson's forehead, and the third one is a little bit hard to see on the image. That's on George Washington's cheek, and that's, of course, the number 3 spot here on the info palette. Okay, let's see what our automated functions will do. We're going to turn off all the layers except for the one that we've named Auto Color. Then we'll go to Image and select Auto Color. And looking at it overall, you can see that the color balance is actually pretty good. On the info palette, it's pretty balanced across all the channels for the neutral, the darks, and the whites. But if you compare it to the original, it lost some contrast, and in my opinion, I think it looks a little bit flat. So we'll try Auto Tone. And again, that's under Image. Select Auto Tone. It looks like it retained pretty good contrast, but it still has a little bit of a red tint, so it's a little bit off. In this scenario, you can combine what you like best from both automated functions with layer blending modes. So in this case, we're going to go to the Auto Tone layer. We'll select Luminosity, and you've got pretty good color balance overall, even if it's a little flat for my taste, and pretty good contrast as compared to the original photo. The second technique that I'm going to show is a little bit more advanced. We'll start with the Levels menu and then find our black eyedropper tool here. We'll click on the black spot we predetermined with our color sampler tool. Click on that. With the white eyedropper tool, we'll find the white spot. Click on that, and that's a pretty good start. Let's stop here for a minute to see what we've changed. If you look at the info palette, on the dark color sample, it's neutral across the board. Same goes for the white, and it's really just the midtones that need a little bit of adjustment across the red, green, and blue channels. So we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, and then Curves. And we're going to pick it apart channel by channel here. Now the red channel is quite a bit out of balance with the green and blue channels. So we'll go to that one. And what you can do is you can click around in the image and you can find that on the Curves menu. You see that circle highlighting right on the curve. We'll use that as a point of reference, create an anchor point there. And as we make this adjustment, just note in the info palette, you'll see that update in real time. So I'm going to use my arrow key to nudge it, and you see the number changing there. And it is pushing a little more towards kind of a bluish tone. Now we're going to bump up the green channel. Now again, selecting in the image to find that anchor point. Looks like it's right in the middle of the curve there. And we're going to bump that a little bit. See that number increase. Now the thing, of course, you want to keep in mind is to watch what's happening in the image. You don't want to blow this way out and make it way too green or too red, too blue, or whatever. Just find a good balance visually and by the numbers. So that's looking pretty good. Okay, so overall, if you go by the numbers, with those two channels, the red and green channel, we've got a pretty good neutral midtone. But taking into account the nature of this photo, it was shot, on a kind of midday, early afternoon or something like that on a bright sunny day. So we do want to find a little bit more warmth in the image, and I'm going to go to the blue channel for that. So again, we're going to select that part of the image. It should be neutral midtone. Find an anchor point that matches that spot on the blue channel, and we're going to give it a little bit of bump, give it a little bit more warmth. Let's compare what we've got now with the image preview turned off. So we had a little bit more of a reddish tint. Now it's a little bit warmer. We'll click OK. So the last thing I'll point out here is that you can dial back, an adjustment that you made with the fade command. That's in Edit and in Fade. And well, let's see what we got here for 0%. That's what we started with. 100% is the adjustments that we just made in the Curves menu. Let's just say you want to go somewhere right in the middle. Personally, I like a little bit more warmth, so I'm going to go 75%. We'll call that good. Now let's compare what we got to our original photo. And we're going to take a look at the blended auto functions, auto tone and auto color. We'll take a look at what our manual adjustments were, and again, there's a little bit more warmth in that image. We got a pretty good overall balance of tone. The color is accurate for the time of day that the photo was taken. The contrast is pretty good, and the objects in the image are pretty well defined. So, you know, I think overall this is an improvement over the original photo. Concluding this demo, I'll circle back to my original point. Manual photo editing is generally pretty cumbersome and probably going to be overkill in most situations. But at the same time, I wouldn't recommend relying solely on single-click functions. What I would suggest is some combination of both, and I definitely encourage experimentation with different techniques to find a process that suits you best. I hope you found this demo useful. Feel free to leave a comment, or if you have questions, let me know. Thanks for watching.